Perfect.
Who better than Derek, Pat, Andrew, the wrestling crew? Man, they bout to put an end to y'all careers like a finishing move. They bout to give y'all facts on these cats that's fighting on these mats. Y'all can't see them like John Cena. Even if y'all had 20/20 vision, y'all better listen, pay attention, and take notes down and realize that it's not your time now. And watch these three kings take the crown. Hey, hey.
The Prince of Aesthetics, Damien Gibbs. That's right, handcrafted by the gods of Mount Olympus. That's right, the Prince of Aesthetics, Damien Gibbs, here on Wrestling IQ 101. Thanks for listening.
Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Wrestling IQ 101. I'm Andrew, alongside Pat and Derek.
Yo!
And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WrestlingIQ101.com or WrestlingIQ101.com. And our special guest today is Booker promoter Erik Viking. How you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
So, Erik, you're the owner and promoter of PWE Wrestling. How did you grow up a wrestling fan?
I was going to say, first off, owner, promoter, Booker, but also, don't forget, concession stand guy, sound guy, bell guy, writer. It's crazy. Like, I have, like, seems like on show day I have like 5,000 jobs. So it's crazy, but we get it done. So it's nuts on show day. Just saying, it's like I don't know what it sounds like. It's promoter and booker. I'm like, wait a minute, but I'm also doing sound too, and I'm also, you know what I mean. I'm also I'm selling merch and I'm selling popcorn as well. It's crazy, but sorry. How did I get into wrestling?
Did you grow up a wrestling fan?
I grew up pretty much the same way a lot of wrestling fans now that are my age did. I started watching it probably around really early, probably maybe at 3.5, 4 years old. Mm-hmm. So with my age group, you know, I started off. I didn't watch WrestleMania 3, but I probably around 88 or 89, I rented. That was my first experience, was renting WrestleMania 3 like on VHS tape and probably watching it hundreds of times. You can ask my mom about it, but I watched it all the way through and then rewind and back through again. So I kind of started with the big one. I started with WrestleMania 3, and I was probably 4 years old or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah, not a bad pay-per-view to start with.
Yeah, definitely. So
I started with the best, and it's like crazy because I remember even being like 4 or 5 years old and being like, wow, Savage Steamboat, man, this is really good, and I didn't and then I was like, well, this is better than, you know, because I was watching it for Hogan and Andre, but really Hogan and Andre was just a staring contest.
Yeah.
Like that's all that they did was they shook, like they like, you know, trembling of the body, and then they just stared at each other for like, you know, 3 or 4 minutes. Where Savage and Steamboat, I remember watching it being like, I knew it was awesome, but I didn't know that 25 years later I would still think that it's one of the best matches I've ever seen. So
yeah, definitely. So can you kind of tell us, how did you actually decide and, you know, get into the wrestling business itself?
So I guess I first, when you mean getting into the business, you mean kind of going to a school and training, or would you say kind of working in the business, as in like a podcast? Would you count that as getting into
definitely.
The business?
Yeah, we definitely count that as working in the business as well.
Cool. So what I did, I'm from Spokane, Washington, which is kind of on the eastern half of Washington, kind of closer towards Idaho. And we never had wrestling there. So for me, getting involved in wrestling or doing anything wrestling related was crazy. And very, very, it made me, you know, really happy to even be involved in any way, because literally the only live event that ever came to our town was SmackDown, and they came once every about 5 years. Oh, nice. So every 5 years I would see one live show, because we have no indies and no independents over there. So I guess what I did to start was I emailed this website called Wrestling. I think it was World Wrestling News or something like that. It was where you submit reviews to when you watch Raw, SmackDown, ECW, you would submit your review of the show. So I started. I forgot what website it was, but I started reviewing shows because I was just like, you know what? I think I want to be a writer. I think I want to. Maybe I could someday in the future, down the line, become a writer for WWE. So I was like, okay, well, I better start by writing about wrestling. So I started reviewing, shows. And then I started a podcast before podcasting was called podcast. It was just called internet radio.
Yeah.
And I was on this thing called what was it? This is back in about 2006. And Wrestling Radio Network. So it was WRN. And I was on there and I had a show. So basically I had an internet radio show where I would go on there, blah, 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 and then have a guest. So I interviewed Jerry Lynn. I interviewed Justin Credible. And that's how I started to really actually be involved. And then from there, that's when I decided, hey, I need to actually be involved. So that's when I did those two things for a year, where I would review Raw, SmackDown, ECW, then I would talk about it on the Wrestling, Radio Network, and then in interview guys. I interviewed Justin Credible right after he got fired, actually, from the new ECW brand that they started. He was fired, and I actually got him. For some reason, it just worked out this way. He got fired on a Sunday, and because he was late to a pay-per-view. He actually showed up late to a pay-per-view, and they fired him on the spot. And I for some reason, had him on Monday as my guest on my show. And it was awesome because I get Justin Credible on, and he's freaking out. I'm like, Justin, how's it going? And he's like, what do you mean, how's it going? I'm pissed off. And I was like, tell me more. You know what I mean? And he was in his car. I could hear him driving, and he was just like, he was going off. He was like, Johnny Ace this, Johnny Ace that. And at this point, I didn't even know who Johnny Ace was. I was like, who's Johnny Ace? And yeah, it was a great, all I have to say is it was the best interview because he just went off. He was just talking about backstage politics, and I was just like, listen, man, I wanted to say, like, listen, I have like 10 listeners. Like, this is like too big of an interview for me to be doing. Like, I wanted to hand him over to, a bigger podcast or something, because like I had like one kid, because we used to have when we used to do interviews, there used to be a chat room. So you would sit there, and your listeners, like I had like 10 listeners, and they would sit there and chat and ask me, hey, ask Justin Credible this. Well, when Justin Credible was literally cutting a promo on me in his car, and it's good stuff. I mean, he's talking about Vince and stuff, and I'm like, wow, I have this one like freaking 14-year-old kid like chatting like in the chat room, be like, ask him this, and I'm thinking like, wow, this is probably going to be the greatest like shoot interview ever, and I have like one 14-year-old kid, like one 14-year-old kid that's sitting there in the chat room, like, misspelling words and stuff, and like sending emojis, and I'm just like, this is ridiculous. This should be like on Colt Cabana's podcast or something. Like, this is good stuff. So I don't know. I did those things for a year in 2006, and then in 2007 I decided, hey, I need to go to the East Coast where all the wrestling is, because it certainly isn't here. And that's when I decided to move to Philly, where I am now, to join the ROH Dojo, they call it.
Nice.
Wow. So that experience, would you say, is what led you to be more towards behind the scenes rather than being in the ring?
I would say so. Me doing the internet radio and doing the reviewing, I don't think so. That just got me more interested in the actual product of WWE at the time, which unfortunately at that time I thought it was pretty bad. I know a lot of people say, Raw right now is bad and Roman Reigns is bad, but let's take this. Let's look at this for a second. 2006, when I started doing internet radio, I mean, we're looking at Bobby Lashley being the ECW champion, which just was weird. You have Lance Cade, who is in the main event on Raw. You have Trevor Murdoch in the main event. This is when Jonathan Coachman was wrestling. I think he wrestled Eugene. And it just, I mean, for people to complain now, let's just take a look at like what they were doing in 2006. Like, it was a bad time to be reviewing. So usually my reviews were like D minuses because I was really watching the product heavily, you know, trying to know everything. But that's not what did it. I would just say I wanted to be in the ring. Like, and the only way to get in the ring, you know, I wanted to be a referee to start. I certainly didn't want to be a wrestler, but I when I got to the Ring of Honor Dojo, that was a whole different story. My first month, I'm, you know, suplexing guys. So, whole different story. But yeah, I went to be a referee. That's what I went to the Ring of Honor Dojo to be, because I wanted to be in the ring. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't have a ring announcing voice. Check mark for the no. You know, check for the no, can't do it. Or let's just put an X there for that. X for being a wrestler, because, you know, I'm weighing in at 135 to 140 pounds. And I know guys like Cheeseburger and stuff, you know, pull that off, but I simply didn't want to be a wrestler. I simply did not want to do the act of professional wrestling. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to just ring the bell. That seemed like it wasn't boring. That would be a little boring, just doing only that. So, I mean, I had a couple options. I had referee and I had commentator. You know, those are the two things I set my sights on, you know, when I moved from Spokane to Philly.
So now that you're the owner and promoter of your own show, what are some of the challenges that you face, you know, booking a show?
Oh, man. Okay. A challenge would be a talent canceling on me last second. That's a major challenge. I mean, you know, you're an hour before showtime and you get a cancellation. What do? You just had the storyline written out. You had the match all planned out, and somebody's stuck in traffic and they can't make it. It's really disheartening. But it's reality. I have to realize that now. Being a new promoter, I need to realize that there are realities. I can plan everything ahead just as much as I want, but you can't help traffic on show day when everything's going crazy and you have stuff like that. That's a major challenge. Another challenge is having the show flow. So if you have a misstep with sound, that's one of the most important parts of a wrestling show is the sound. Even in WWE, what's his face? Who produces WWE? Who's the I forgot Kevin his name. Dunn? Who is the main producer? What, Dunn?
Yeah, Kevin Dunn.
Kevin Dunn has one of the most important jobs in the company. The way I've watched sound work in Ring of Honor, the way I've tried to do it myself, it can make or break you. You know, if you accidentally click on the wrong song for the guy to come out to, boom, everything's ruined. Like everything's ruined. If there's a glitch, ruined everything. Like if you don't have the entrance music at the right time, or if the guy 1 2 3 ding ding ding, if you don't hit the music or you're not paying attention, it all doesn't work. Like sound and production is the most challenging and important thing. Seems like it's easy. Seems like you can just click on a song, but timing is everything as well. So I would say cancellations and sound. those are challenges. Plus, like I was saying, I have about 10 jobs at my shows. So that's a challenge of me trying to work with the talent to make sure that we're on the same page. So I'm working with the talent, making sure, hey, we're on the same page, right? But I also need to realize there's 30 guys. I have to get to every single one of them while performing 10 jobs at the same time. So,
how common do these issues come up, like at PWE especially?
Like, as in cancellations?
Yeah, cancellation or sound issues or anything like that.
there's at least 3 cancellations per show. None of them were cancellations that led to, a main event having to change. So, if I'm promoting a main event, yeah, I at least I haven't had issues with that. You don't want your main event that you've been promoting to fall through. Are you guys familiar with Defy?
No.
Defy Wrestling?
Oh, yeah, Defy Wrestling, yes.
Out of Seattle?
Yeah.
Well, they've recently had that problem, and luckily I haven't. My cancellations have been, some undercard talent or a ref or sound guy, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They had a major issue just about a month ago where I think his name's Penta El Om or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with this stuff. He's in Lucha Underground.
Oh,
Penta, yeah.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
The white mask and everything.
Yeah, like they were promoting him versus Cody Rhodes as their main event for their big show, and he just no-showed. Like, he didn't get on the plane that bought him.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like, that's a major problem.
Yeah, it's huge. He's a big draw too.
You can't promote a main event and, like, as in promoting it everywhere. They probably had billboards, I'm sure, or something, because Defy's, their production is very big and their promotion is is getting big. And yeah, for your main event to just no show, it's like, oh, okay, I guess all that, as a promoter, all that hard work that I just put in and all that money that I just put in went right down into the trash can.
So how do you manage doing all these jobs? Is it like a schedule, or is it kind of like just organized chaos type of thing?
I'd say it starts out with a schedule, and then that schedule then starts to change when things start changing, right?
Yeah.
So you start having to do things that you didn't think or you didn't foresee having to do. Let's say that a drape is coming down. No one else is going to do it except for the person running the show. So it's like, oh wow, there goes that. I have to hurry up and do that, or somebody, And I like it. It's fun. It's fun to run around. It's like organized chaos. It's I don't know who to really compare it to. I mean, I'm just starting out as a promoter, so I don't have a lot of people doing a lot of jobs. I'm sure in Ring of Honor, I had a job when I was doing their shows. I ran the lights, and I had a job, and that's what I did. But for me, it's like, I'm just starting out as a brand new independent wrestling company, so all the jobs are me. Yeah. So it's fun, but it's also hectic.
Yeah.
So I can't really complain. It's fun and crazy at the same time.
So when you're booking, what goes into constructing the roster and the cards? Because you have guys from all over. You have guys from CZW, Chikara, ROH, WrestlePro. So what do you put into constructing the cards?
So I have to first look at what I want out of a wrestling company. So for me, Pro Wrestling Explosion is kind of I wanted like an explosion of wrestling styles, because I didn't want it just to be one thing, and I just think that the possibility, if you are one thing, a lot of people would argue you need to be one thing because then that's your brand, but I'm looking at Pro Wrestling Explosion as an explosion of styles, but it also harps on kind of like I'm using a spacey theme, so I kind of like, the Big Bang, an explosion of galaxies and colors and lasers and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of my graphic, and it's also an explosion of wrestling styles. And what I look at it as, if I'm watching a Chikara show, they're heavily storyline based, right? And they're heavily into characters. So everybody has an over-the-top character. Ring of Honor is more like, okay, everyone's wearing trunks and go to the ring and have a 5-star match. Everybody have a 5-star match. Not a lot of storylines, right? Not a lot of promos or stories. they do it, but their focus is the inside of the ring, best wrestlers in the world. That's kind of what they even say, best wrestling on the planet.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to take guys from a lot of different areas, and the guys that I book are guys that I really, really like. My time in Ring of Honor, I've got to meet so many of these people, and that's kind of why I've been able to book a lot of ROH talent. I know a lot of Chikara guys, and what I look for is I take the best people that I like, that I personally feel are talented and awesome wrestlers in some way. In some way. Some guys might just be good at mic work, or some guys might be awesome wrestlers. But my core thing is I want to have a clash of styles. So that's the core. Pro Wrestling explosion of wrestling styles. I want two guys that have never wrestled each other. So if you notice, I don't know, if you go back and look at some of the cards that I've done, a lot of these talents have never wrestled each other ever before on the indies or anywhere. So I want unique qualities to clash. So I want a cop to wrestle an inmate, or I want two extremes to wrestle. So I would be inclined to book Donovan Dijak, let's say, and I could have booked, when I had Donovan Dijak come wrestle for us in March, I could have put him against anybody, right? Mm-hmm. He's a great wrestler. Yeah. I put him against Ophidian, who's a lucha guy. He has, costume, style. That's his style. And then I wanted him to go against the lucha guy. I think that putting two extremes together is awesome. So clash of styles is what I am looking for in a PWE ring.
Yeah. So going back to, the beginning, how did you get started with PWE, and how does anyone get started that wants to have their own wrestling company?
Well, my path was just, I went to the Ring of Honor school, and I would tell anybody to go to a school first, because not only do you learn how to wrestle and learn how to talk on a microphone or referee, you learn all these things, you're also meeting people who could later down the line be people that you want to work with if you become a promoter. So for me, I went to the school and I started wrestling. I wrestled for a year and a half at the Ring of Honor Academy, and by the time it was all over, I'm doing everything that everyone else in the class is doing. Full matches. It sure helped me refereeing to learn to know how to wrestle as well. To be a wrestler and then start refereeing, I knew exactly what the guys were doing in the ring. The first match I ever refereed professionally was it was Claudio Castagnoli, which is now Cesaro. I had him versus, I forgot who he was, but I knew exactly what Claudio was doing in the ring. You know what I mean? Just because I had just been training for a year and a half, I knew exactly what he was doing, the psychology he was using, and it made me really good at positioning. What position I'm going to be in. When do I need to not see something? When do I need to turn my head? Going to a school helps in so many ways. It helps. You don't want to just jump in and start your own company as just a wrestling fan. I just don't think you would know enough things that are important. Anybody can write, anybody can front the money, right? Anybody can just have a lot of money, rent a ring, rent a venue, book a bunch of talent, and run a show. I get it. It's harder than it sounds, but anybody could do it, technically. But I don't think that it would be. I just don't think it would work right unless you were in the business beforehand. I would say start by going to a school and get a job. Get a job in wrestling before you become a promoter. Being a promoter is my last thing. It's my last. Like, I started in 2008, and I've done refereeing, managing, and obviously wrestling at the school, not professionally. And I feel like now, being a promoter, I have all the tools necessary to become the promoter at this point. And it kind of worked that way with a lot of guys, right? Like Paul Heyman and Jim Cornette. Yep. Didn't they go to wrestling school and then become managers and then become promoters? Because Jim Cornette was running Smoky Mountain, and Paul Heyman was running ECW, right?
Yep.
So I guess that's the path I took. And I truly believe that somebody should not become a promoter that hasn't worked in wrestling before. It just would be bad, and it just wouldn't work, and there wouldn't really be much respect between the wrestlers and the promoter. And that's important to me, is having all the wrestlers know that, hey, I've been in your position before, and this is why we should do this. This is why we should do this. And they won't just look at me and be like, well, you're just a stupid fan. Yeah. They don't do that with me because they know where I came from.
It's true.
So when you first started, how did you start picking venues and start promoting the shows and gaining an audience?
Well, I'm still working on that part, actually. So, I mean, I need to build an audience, and that's where it starts. I mean, the first thing I did was asked a lot of guys in the business, do you know of any venues? And I was able to locate a venue, rent it for the night, and I was able to locate a ring and rent that for the night. And from there, once I realized that I had the venue and I had the ring, I had to get to work. That was when the work started. That's when I'm like, okay, I need a logo. What do I want? Cool. I love 80s movies. So I'm gonna do a Tron theme, right? Like lasers and grid. That's what I really wanted for my logo, was kind of a spacey theme. So once I got the logo and you have the venue, you need to start social media. It just is what it is. You need a Facebook, a Twitter, an Instagram right off the bat. And I did that, and you start to, get interest. You start to talk to people through there, and interest builds, and it'll snowball from there. Right now, I'm not really to the level that I'd like to be. I see a lot of other independents that, they have a lot more invested interest from fans, and I'm brand new. We just had our 1 year anniversary show, right? Just 1 year. And, I mean, we're going good, but we can do a lot better. We can definitely do a lot better. So, I basically, you get the venue, you get the ring, and then you need to start really working on what your product is. What do you want for your logo? Who's going to do the logo? And you start from that's the bare bottom, and then you start with social media and you build it from there.
So talk about that 1 year anniversary show a little bit. And the feeling that you made it 1 year and you can keep going. But talk about the event and go into it and the success.
Well, first, are you guys familiar with the venue, or do you know where the venue was that we held it at?
You have it at the Knights of Columbus, was it, or you went somewhere else?
No, that was our first 3 shows were at the Knights of Columbus. This one was our first ever time in Philly.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So it was actually at the Wrestle Factory, which Chikara uses for some of their events. Yeah. And that's, kind of where they train their wrestlers and so forth. So I was doing my shows in Somerdale, New Jersey, not far from Philadelphia, right? It's just over the water, probably a 10-minute drive over the water. And the venue just canceled on me out of nowhere. Like a month away from my 1 year anniversary show, they just called me and they're just like, sorry, canceled. And I'm like, wow. You wanna talk about frustrations and things like that, of that nature? Well, that's a frustrating thing, having the venue get canceled on you a month away from the show. Yeah. So I had to scramble and find a venue, and luckily, I had people within that company that referred me over to them, and that's kind of where, you know, I was like, okay, I got to get this show going. Let's get a venue. So we decided to have it there, and that place is awesome. If you guys, if you keep up with Chikara product, you should definitely go see a show there. It's kind of like a little studio that they have. Yeah. You know, it reminds me of like old NWA. Like, you remember those how there was like NWA stuff with Ric Flair and the Horsemen and so forth, where you would look at the fans, it would look like they were in this like little like sound stage, this little like sound studio or something.
Flags and stuff.
Yeah.
You remember that when there's like you look at the fans, you're like, wow, there's literally only 50 people there.
Yeah.
And you're like, and you guys remember like Ric Flair cut some of his best promos all the time right there.
Yep.
It's like crazy.
With the flags around
in
the
front
world.
of like 50 fans.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah.
And then, I like the best part is like
that's pretty much what Chikara has.
Yeah, and the best part is like if a fight broke out, like the ring was right there too.
Oh wow, that's very true.
That was like the best part of all that stuff. Oh man, so you know, booking the shows and stuff like that. What was like your favorite match or moment that you booked and you saw come to fruition?
Oh man, okay, so for sure, I've got to say, Tracy Williams versus Delirious.
Nice.
I would definitely, it's on YouTube, just YouTube, Hot Sauce Tracy Williams versus Delirious. It's from our September 9th show. We called it Round 2. That was our second show ever. And yeah, you had Tracy and Delirious in the main event, and I'm telling you, watch that match from start to finish. It's a technically genius. It's paced awesomely. Like, maybe people do think about it, but pace in a match, like when to do this, when to slow down, when to pick it up, it all was perfect. Like, the pacing was great, the footwork was great, the timings were great, the counter moves were great. It was just a really, really cool match. And you know, at that show, I'm not drawing many fans. Not many people are seeing this, but I can tell you for sure that would be the best match that I didn't know how good it was going to be when I booked it. I just thought, man, Tracy Williams is an awesome like ground guy, right? Really good counter move guy. I don't know if you guys have seen him in Evolve, but really, really good counter moves and groundwork. And then you got Delirious, who's this crazy, outlandish character, right?
Yeah.
He just goes crazy and he yells and screams, and that's what it comes back to, right? It comes back to a clash of styles, right? Because I'm looking at Tracy Williams, and he is your basic. He wears black trunks. You know, he wears black trunks and black boots. He's rolling with, you know, the Stone Cold Steve Austin look, where it's just he is who he is, and he's just an awesome wrestler. And then you have Delirious, who's, you know, has all of his, you know, wardrobe and everything. It's all colorful, and he yells and screams and goes crazy and jumps into the fans and feeds the fans hot dogs. It's exactly what I wanted. A clash between two different styles, and they clashed, and it worked. To me, they clashed, and it worked perfect, and it was just an awesome main event. I can't say. I even you know, was telling those guys, they were both wrestling at my last show, the 1-year anniversary show, you know, and I told both of them again, hey, that match is awesome. just saying. You know.
So
Delirious just yelled at me and went blah 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 blah. Screamed at me, and I was like, okay, I got it. That's good, right? Is that good? Tracy was just like, you know, I really like that match too. I agree. So it was awesome.
At PWE, we've seen Gino Gotz in a different role than at a lot of the other promotions, where he's been like a correspondent, like ringside, interviewing people. Can you talk about that a little bit and like what kind of prompted that?
Okay, so I like this Gino Gotz guy. I like his accent, his regular accent. He's got this like kind of Italian, kind of little mobster in there. I think he's a Brooklyn guy. I don't know where he's a North Jersey guy, but he might have lived in Brooklyn. I don't know. He's got this like, hey man, he's a wise guy. Like he's got this like, kind of whiny, like wise guy type of. Oh man, I see a lot of Joe Pesci in.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like you know Joe Pesci from
exactly.
Like,
yep.
That's what everybody says
like think of
about
a
Gino.
Home Alone 2, right?
Like I think like my cousin Vinny.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm looking at Gino Gotz, and he's smaller in stature, so he's a shorter guy, but he's got this great like, and it's not even a character. Like that's his real voice.
Yeah.
He kind of sounds kind of like a cartoon or something.
Definitely.
It's fantastic. He doesn't know what he's got going for him. He's awesome. And I was like, dude, do you want to be my interviewer? Do you want to be the guy that interviews the wrestlers for, after the match? And he's been doing great. Like he doesn't need a script. He doesn't need anything. I just say, hey, go grab that guy and interview him. And the interview turns out flawless. He's very, very charismatic. And I use him for various different things. He's a manager. He manages the Taboo crew. He's an interviewer. He works, he rings the bell. He does a lot of different things, and he doesn't need to be told anything. He's just very, very talented, and he has a lot of charisma once you hand him the microphone. So he's awesome.
Nice. Now with Gino, we know him personally, so we just want to ask: do you keep like a censor button like ready every time he talks?
Yeah, he was actually. So of course he's done many jobs with us. He started out interviewing, and then he started managing the Taboo crew, and then he works the bell as well. But this show, he was the host of the show.
Oh,
we had him as the ring announcer. So. Yeah, he had full control of the microphone. I don't know what he was gonna do. I really didn't. He just gets out there with his normal voice. Just letting you know, that's his normal voice.
Yeah.
A lot of people have to fake that. In movies and stuff, they have to like learn how to do that voice. He has a legit voice.
Yeah.
Legit. And he goes out there and just kills it. I didn't give him a script or nothing. He just grabbed the microphone and started announcing the show, and he was doing bits in between, so he'd announce the match, and then do a bit where, after the match was over, he'd lay in on the Philly fans and be like, make fun of our teams, like the Phillies, while he's patting his forehead down with like a New York Giants towel or something. Or like, I think he had like a Yankees object or something. I don't know what he was doing, but he was definitely like playing around with the fans, just like really, really making fun of Philly, and then just like very much promoting New York, promoting the Mets because he loves the Mets. And
Great guy.
hey, the Mets. Yeah. But it probably wasn't Yankees actually, because he probably hates the Yankees if he's a Mets fan. So I think it was something to do with Mets and Giants, I think. And he's just really good at it. You give him a microphone, and you think that you may have to censor it, but he knows what to do. He knows it's a family-friendly show, so he knows where the lines are drawn. You know what I mean?
Definitely. He holds the record for the most curse words used on our show.
Really?
Yes.
By far.
Did you guys interview him?
Him and the Taboo crew, we did. Yes.
Yeah. You might know.
Oh, and he just started swearing.
Yeah.
No, he was talking normally.
Wow, what's his favorite swear word?
Oh my! I'm pretty sure fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people that you worked with, from Habib, CPA, the Beach Bums, Taboo, from that have wrestled for you. Matt, Helen Dale. So yeah.
Yes, of course. Matt McIntosh.
Yeah, and that got pretty real too, because you actually had them wrestle each other.
Yeah.
Oh, the things you learn in wrestling once you book matches.
Yeah.
I did not know that they had a history, like in real life. So yeah, it basically it puts wrinkles in what you were gonna do, because then you got to think like, oh wait, maybe this won't work. maybe this isn't a good idea. But so I take it that you guys keep up with the WrestlePro product.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're very familiar with WrestlePro.
So you guys are you guys based out of, like, I don't know, I think they do a lot of their shows in like Metuchen
Rahway.
and like Rahway.
Yeah, we're about 25 minutes away from there.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're familiar with, you know, Pat Buck's kind of rise to being a promoter from being kind of a independent wrestler. I think he started off in OVW, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So,
cool. Well, there's another guy that is pretty savvy. He's pretty smart at what he's doing, because I don't know how long he's had WrestlePro for. I know that it was something to do with Pro Wrestling Syndicate for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he branched off, and he's taken the bull by its horns, man. I see what he's doing, and the show, how many fans he draws, and how he books, and it's crazy. Like, he really did go from being a wrestler, which he still is a wrestler, to really, really being comfortable as a promoter of a very, like, I would say, an evolving brand. He's bringing in guys like Cole Cabanas and stuff, and Bobby Lashley. He's working with top talent.
Yep.
So
have you been
yeah,
to?
Pat Buck.
Have you been to the show?
That's the thing. I like. Yeah, I had some of his talent come and wrestle for me, but I actually haven't even been to a show. I've watched matches. I've seen pictures. I don't know why I haven't been up there. I think I was actually going to be up there promoting, as in, like, you know, having a table and passing out flyers and saying, hey, PWE's coming up next week. For whatever reason, that got canceled. And, yeah, I really want to go up there and support what he's doing, because I can just tell how hard it is. Like, I'm watching the production, and I'm like, I know this isn't easy for Pat, going from being a wrestler to having to deal with what you have to deal with as a promoter. You're dealing with a lot, man. You're doing, like you're saying, like, you're in charge of everything, and then, you know, the money has to be right. You have to pay for this and pay for that and pay for this. Oh, this person wants money, this person wants money. Oh, how about billboards? Oh, billboard here, money. But you have to get the graphics, and you have to, who's gonna do the graphic for the billboard? Who's gonna do this and this and this? It just starts stacking up. You know what I mean? And to watch his production, kind of admire a guy like that, because I'm trying to work my way up to being, you know, at the level of Pat Buck at some point. And you gotta like what he's doing.
Yeah, and it's crazy too, because he runs the school Creative Pro and stuff like that. So he's all
I've
over
heard of
this.
it.
Yeah, so it's crazy.
So I was gonna say. So not only is he doing all the things I just mentioned, like, oh, this and this comes up, and his email is probably stacked. You know, he probably has like a million emails to answer, and then he's in the ring training guys too, like 3 days a week.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure he doesn't sleep, but he's doing an awesome thing, and I like his talent. I mean, we've had CPA and Helen Vale and all that, but I'm definitely down with the Beach Bums, man.
Yeah,
definitely into the Beach Bums.
Yeah,
they're good dudes for sure.
definitely good dudes.
I mean, they're good dudes in a business that can sometimes not be so good, and I like to see that. The main thing, actually, to go back to another question really quick, what do you look for in booking a match? How about this? You know how I said I like a clash of styles, which is true. I want Donovan Dijak to wrestle a lucha guy. That's what I want. I want babyface Tracy Williams, awesome ground game, to face crazy wild character. That's really what I want to do. But most importantly, who I want to book are nice people.
Yeah.
Wow, that's weird, right? like, you know, you might have companies out there, some of the bigger companies that literally book a guy based on his talent. Like, oh wow, that guy's getting a lot of buzz. That guy's really good. Like, like let's say the Young Bucks, for instance. Those guys are flashy and good, and they are all those things. But the first thing that I ask talent when they hit me up and they're like, "Hey, we're interested in wrestling for you." First thing I start talking about, well, first thing I do is I ask some of their colleagues, "Hey, is this guy a good dude? Is he a good guy? Is he a good locker room guy? Is he nice?" And if I get the approval there, then I just start talking about like a good feeling for who these guys are and where their mind is. And egos aren't allowed in PWE. They just aren't. Like, you're not going to have an ego and wrestle. And if you do have an ego, I just won't, book that wrestler again, because it's not about that. It's about fun. It's about fun, and it's not a competition like some, maybe WWE is like a competition because guys are like, well, I'm really low on the card. How am I going to get up on the card? How am I going to, maybe I have to stab some guys in the back. Maybe I have to talk to Vince. There's always ways to, get ahead, right? Well, none of that needs to happen in independent wrestling, first off. And not only that, my show is just a small little show for guys to have fun at. So, main thing I actually look for in booking talent I'm looking to see if they're nice dudes. And Beach Bums are nice dudes. Rhett Titus is a nice dude. All the talent that I've booked are nice dudes. So that's what I look for.
Yeah.
Before we go, what can fans expect for year 2? I mean,
okay, so I'm kind of right now. I'm just doing the whole live show, selling DVD or filming, editing, and selling DVDs. You will see in year 2 me join a streaming service, which is where independent wrestling is going right now. There's a lot of different types of streaming services, but I will be on one of those streaming services. So you will be able to order PWE through that service or iPay-per-view or something of that nature.
Nice.
So you will see that in year 2. Continue to see interesting matchups that you've never seen before, guys that have never wrestled each other ever before. That's really important to me. And you're going to see a venue that's going to be my venue. So, like you guys were saying, Pat Buck has that Rahway Rec Center, correct?
Yeah.
That's a cool place. And it's also Pat Buck's place, which is awesome, right? Because I don't know if there's any other wrestling that goes on there. And even if there is, you know what? He books that venue about once a month, right? So that's his place. That's the TNA called it the Impact Zone. Well, this is the Wrestle Pro Zone. And you know what? The Rahway Rec Center is the Wrestle Pro Zone. I want a PWE zone.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find a venue in Jersey where I don't have to keep moving from venue to venue. I'm going to find a PWE zone that's perfect for what I do, and then we're going to get a streaming service in there. So it's going to be, I'm thinking things can only go up from here, right? And then from there, probably year 3, you might see a wrestling school sprout up.
Nice.
So that's what I'm looking to do.
Nice. Sounds good. So, and can you also tell our fans where they can follow you, where they can follow PWE on social media so they can keep up to date on everything that's going on?
Of course. Of course, you would go facebook.com/pro wrestling explosion.
Yep.
But yeah, that's just that. And then at Twitter, it's at PWE shows. I wish I had just at PWE, but no, some other guy has it, and I don't have the finances to purchase it from him. So, oh well, he's got PWE. Good for him. So it's at PWE shows. And then Instagram is at Pro Wrestling Explosion. So that's where you're going to see, obviously, pictures of the shows, pictures of, or videos of promos, interviews, things of that nature. And then, yeah, the Twitter thing I'm not really the biggest fan of. Because you know what? As you can already tell, I'm talking a lot. I also like to write a lot. And Twitter gives me 140 characters, and it just, I hate it. Like, I get on there and I'm like, this is horrible. Why do people like this? I can't just say 5 things. I need to say a million things. I have so many things on my mind. Like, I can't just go on there because it's like I write 2 sentences and I'm like, oh, it's telling me I'm already negative words. I'm already negative letters. I believe me, like, I type sometimes and I think I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter and it'll say, like, you know how you go into the red?
Yeah.
And it says -7?
Yeah.
Well, like, it's been for me, like, -250 before.
Oh my god.
Because I forgot what social media I was on, and I feel like I am a writer at heart, though. Like, I actually write short stories and stuff like that, and I can't just talk in 2-sentence increments. I need to really, really explain things in grave detail at all times. So, yeah, at PWE shows, though, on Twitter and Facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Explosion and Pro Wrestling Explosion on Instagram. Those are, and then you can go to our YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/Pro Wrestling Explosion. That is, again, better than anything, I would say, because you're seeing all the promos that are leading up to the event. Right? You can just keep watching every promo, and you can get invested in what Bobby Dempsey is doing. What's his promo like? What's his program like up until, you know, the event? What's this guy's? Everybody has a story. There's nobody left behind. The first match has a storyline. Everybody has a story, and our YouTube channel reflects that. So, yeah, if everyone checks me out there, they can. That's the coolest place, you know, to really get up to date on what's going on.
Awesome. So, Eric, we wanted to say thank you for taking the time out and talking to us. We really appreciate that.
Definitely.
No, thank you guys. My pleasure. I will talk. I will sit down and talk wrestling with anybody, anytime.
Awesome.
And we'll definitely have to have you back, maybe next time in person or something like that.
I would love to do it in person. I just did a podcast in person down in Baltimore, and the vibe is much better. So yeah, I'd love to come to your guys'. I don't know if you guys do it in your house, apartment, or studio, but it doesn't matter. It's better in person.
Definitely.
So, and for us, for Wrestling IQ 101, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or at WrestlingIQ101.com. Peace.
Yep. You have just listened to the Wrestling IQ 101 podcast, powered by B Plus Player Radio.
One more for the good guy.